The grand amphitheater stretched upward like a mountain turned inside out. Victoria Hayes had seen images of the Galactic Unity Council chambers before, but nothing prepared her for the reality. 7,000 seats rose in concentric circles, each occupied by a representative from one of the star nations. Some were humanoid. Others defied description. Crystalline beings pulsed with inner light. Gaseous entities floated in containment fields. A cluster of hive minds communicated through bioluminescent flashes, and they were all watching her. Victoria stood in the defendant's circle at the center of the amphitheater floor. A human. Alone. The circle was designed to make whoever stood in it feel small. It worked. The marble beneath her feet was etched with symbols from languages dead before Earth had written language. Above her, the domed ceiling showed the galaxy itself, slowly rotating, with Earth marked as a tiny blue dot at the edge of civilized space. The Magistrate Prime descended from the highest tier. The being was made entirely of crystal formations that caught and refracted light into rainbow patterns. When it spoke, the voice came from everywhere at once, resonating through frequencies that made Victoria's bones vibrate. Ambassador Victoria Hayes of Earth, you stand accused of violating Article 47 of the Unity Charter, cultural contamination of a protected species. The penalty for this violation is immediate revocation of your species' settlement rights and permanent exile from Unity space. How do you answer these charges? Victoria had been a diplomat for 20 years. She had negotiated trade deals, prevented wars, and once talked down a planetary governor from committing genocide. But this was different. This was humanity's first appearance before the Galactic Unity Council. Earth had only been granted limited settlement rights 5 years ago, a probationary status that could be revoked at any moment. And now, because of one man on one colony world, everything hung in the balance. She took a breath. We deny the charges, Magistrate Prime. A wave of sound rolled through the amphitheater. Clicks, whistles, harmonic resonances. The alien equivalent of shocked murmurs. No one denied charges before the council. You pleaded for mercy. You offered compensation. You accepted punishment. You did not deny. The magistrate's crystalline form brightened. You deny? When we have documented evidence, Observer Veltok, present your findings. A section of the floor illuminated, and a three-dimensional image appeared, hovering in the air. It showed a forest clearing on a human colony world. A man was working on a wooden structure, fitting logs together by hand. And at the edge of the clearing, partially hidden by trees, stood a figure. Tall, slender, covered in silvery down that seemed to glow in the filtered sunlight. This is Frontier's Edge. A human colony world, the magistrate continued. The human you see is Marcus Webb, a former soldier. The being watching him is Shelvara, a Mothkari widow. The Mothkari are a protected species under Unity law. They are sacred mourners. When they lose their bonded partners and offspring, they enter a grief state that lasts until death. It is their biology, their culture, their right. Interference with Mothkari mourning is forbidden. The image changed. Now it showed Marcus setting down a bowl of water. The Mothkari widow approaching it after he left. Taking it, drinking. For 23 days, Marcus Webb engaged in contact with Shelvara, the magistrate said. He provided food and water. He spoke to her. And then, the image shifted again. This time, it showed Marcus and Shelvara working together, lifting a heavy beam into place on the cabin structure. The amphitheater erupted. Voices rose in every language, every frequency. Victoria heard words she did not need translated. Contamination, violation, savages. Order! The magistrate's voice cut through the chaos. Ambassador Hayes, your species was explicitly warned about the Mothkari. You were told that any contact would be considered a violation of the highest order. Yet this man, this Marcus Webb, deliberately and systematically interfered with a widow's sacred mourning. He pulled her from her grief state. Do you understand what he has done? Victoria looked up at the towering amphitheater, at the thousands of alien faces watching her. She thought about Marcus Webb, who she had interviewed 3 days ago in a holding cell. A quiet man with tired eyes who had said, I just couldn't let her fade away like that. Not when I knew she didn't have to. Magistrate Prime, Victoria said, her voice steady. May I ask a question? Silence. Then, you may. In the 10,000 years the Mothkari have been part of the Unity, how many widows have recovered from their grief state? The magistrate's light pulsed. None. It is impossible. Mothkari biology does not allow for recovery from such loss. Then let me rephrase, Victoria said. Before Marcus Webb, how many had ever tried to help them? Another wave of sound. Angry this time. The question is irrelevant, the magistrate said. Helping is interference. Interference is contamination. No, Victoria said. The word echoed in the vast chamber. The question is the only thing that matters. Because Shelvara did not fade. She did not die. For the first time in recorded galactic history, a Mothkari widow recovered from her grief. And you want to punish the man who saved her life? A new voice entered the chamber. It came from the high seats, from a section draped in silver cloth. The ambassador speaks out of turn. Mothkari do not need saving. We honor our grief. We carry it until we return to the infinite. This is our way. Victoria turned. In the silver-draped section sat 3 figures, tall and ancient, their down turned gray with age. The Mothkari elders. With respect, honored elders, Victoria said, what if your way has become a cage? The amphitheater went silent. Even the ambient hum of environmental systems seemed to pause. The lead elder stood. You dare question traditions older than your species? I dare ask, Victoria said, whether tradition should demand death. Because that is what happens, is it not? Mothkari widows fade. They stop eating. Stop drinking. They walk into wilderness and let themselves die. You call it sacred. But Marcus Webb called it what it is. Suicide. The word landed like a bomb. Half the representatives in the chamber recoiled. The other half leaned forward. Marcus Webb is a soldier, Victoria continued. He fought in wars. He watched people he loved die. When he came home, he was drowning in grief. And you know what saved him? Work. Building something with his hands. Creating something new. Not to replace what he lost, but to prove he could still make something beautiful in a broken world. She gestured to the image still hovering in the air. When he saw Shelvara watching him, he recognized her. Not as an alien, as someone standing at the same edge he had stood at. So he did what humans do. He offered her a hand. A bowl of water. A chance to build something instead of fading into nothing. This is contamination, the magistrate said. You admit it yourself. He imposed human solutions on an alien species. He offered a choice, Victoria said. And she chose to live. Is that really so terrible? The magistrate's form pulsed through colors. Red, orange, yellow. The council will deliberate, but understand, Ambassador Hayes, that if we find your species guilty, Earth will lose all settlement rights. Every human colony will be evacuated. Your species will be confined to your home system for the next century. Do you comprehend the stakes? Victoria met the magistrate's gaze, or what passed for a gaze in a crystalline being. I comprehend that one man built a cabin to save himself and in doing so saved someone else. If the galaxy punishes that, then maybe the galaxy is what needs changing, not humanity. The amphitheater exploded in chaos. Some representatives were on their feet demanding Victoria's immediate expulsion. Others were arguing among themselves. The Mothkari elders had gone completely still, which was somehow more frightening than if they had raged. Through it all, Victoria stood in the defendant's circle and thought about Marcus Webb, alone on a colony world, building his cabin log by log, not knowing he was about to change the galaxy forever. The magistrate raised a crystalline appendage. The council will hear testimony, starting with the human in question. Bring forth Marcus Webb. 3 months earlier, Frontier's Edge was barely worthy of the name colony. 2,000 humans scattered across a continent, most of them trying to forget something. Failed marriages, dead-end careers, wars that had stolen too much. The planet itself was beautiful in a wild way, covered in forests of purple-barked trees and meadows of silver grass that sang when wind passed through it. Marcus Webb had chosen the most remote plot available, 200 acres at the edge of human territory, where the forest grew thick and the nearest neighbor was 15 miles away. He paid for it with his discharge money from Earth Defense Corps and hiked into his new property with nothing but a rucksack and a chainsaw. The first night, he slept on bare ground and listened to alien insects chirp in frequencies that made his teeth ache. The second day, he marked out where his cabin would stand. The third day, he cut down his first tree. The work was brutal. Each log weighed several hundred pounds. He had to limb them, strip the bark, cut them to length, and drag them into position. His hands blistered. His back screamed. But the screaming in his head got quieter. Kepler Station had been 12 years ago, but Marcus still dreamed about it every night. The distress call. The pirate attack. His unit responding while Marcus stayed behind on a broken transport ship, trying to get the engines online. By the time he arrived, everyone was dead. 40 people. His entire unit. Bodies floating in the vacuum where the station's hull had been breached. He had received a medal, a promotion, survivor's benefits. What he had not received was his family back, so he came to Frontier's edge to build something. Maybe a cabin, maybe a life, maybe just a reason to wake up tomorrow. On the fourth day, he noticed her. She stood at the tree line, maybe 80 yards from where he was working. Tall, easily 7 feet, slender as a sapling. Her body was covered in what looked like fine fur or down, colored somewhere between silver and pale blue. Large eyes, dark and unblinking, watched his every movement. Marcus knew what she was immediately. The colony's orientation briefing had been very clear about the Mothkari, a protected species, rare, dangerous to approach. If you see one, report it immediately and maintain distance. Under no circumstances should you attempt contact. The briefing officer had explained why. Mothkari pair bonded for life and raised a single offspring together. When the bonded partner died, or when the child died, the surviving Mothkari entered a grief state. They would mourn for years, sometimes decades, slowly fading until death claimed them. It was their biology, their culture, sacred and untouchable. If you see a Mothkari alone in the wilderness, the officer had said, you are watching someone die. Leave them in peace. Marcus looked at the figure at the tree line. She had not moved since he first spotted her. Just standing, watching, he went back to work. She was there the next day, and the day after that, always at the same spot, always watching. On the 6th day, Marcus caught himself talking to her, even though she was too far away to hear. Logs too twisted, he muttered, examining a piece that would not fit right. Going to have to cut a new one. The figure tilted her head. The gesture was so familiar, so human, that Marcus felt something crack in his chest. On the 7th day, he carried a bowl of water out to the tree line. Not close to where she stood, just to a spot where she could see it. He set it down and walked away without looking back. The next morning, the bowl was empty. Marcus found a small carving beside the bowl. It was made from wood he did not recognize, carved with incredible skill. It showed 3 figures, 2 tall, 1 small, a family. But the small figure had been carefully removed, leaving an empty space between the 2 larger ones. Marcus held the carving for a long time. Then he set it on a stump where she could see it and went back to work. That afternoon, Governor David Kane arrived in a transport vehicle, his face red and angry. "Webb, what the hell are you doing?" Marcus looked up from notching a log. "Building a cabin. You have a Mothkari on your property. The orbital sensors picked up her heat signature 3 days ago. We reported it to the Galactic Watch like we are required to. They are sending an observer. Do you understand what this means?" Marcus understood. The colony's settlement rights were probationary. Any violation of Unity law, any hint of interference with protected species, and humanity would lose Frontier's edge. 2,000 people sent packing because of one mistake. "I have not approached her," Marcus said. "I have not spoken to her. I am just building my cabin." Caney pointed at the empty water bowl. "What is that?" "Water evaporates in the sun." "Do not play games with me, Webb. If the Galactic Watch determines we have interfered with a Mothkari grief state, they will revoke our charter. Everyone here loses their homes. Children get uprooted. Families destroyed. Because of you." Marcus set down his tools. "What do you want me to do?" "Stay away from her. No food, no water, no contact. Let her mourn in peace." Caney's voice softened slightly. "I know your record, Webb. I know what you have been through. But you cannot save everyone. Some grief cannot be fixed." After Caney left, Marcus looked toward the tree line. The Mothkari widow was still there, watching. That night, he did not leave water. But he did not pack up and leave either. He just kept building. 2 days later, a Galactic Watch observer arrived. Veltok was a quinn, a species that looked like upright mantises with iridescent shells. The observer set up monitoring equipment around Marcus's property, tiny drones that would record everything. "I am Observer Veltok," the alien said through a translation device. "I am here to ensure compliance with Unity law regarding protected species. Any contact with the Mothkari will result in immediate termination of settlement rights. Any communication will be considered contamination. Any exchange of items will be treated as interference. Do you understand?" Marcus understood. Veltok pointed at the widow still visible at the tree line. "That Mothkari lost her bonded partner and offspring 4 years ago. She has been fading ever since. She came to this region to die alone, as is her right. You will not interfere with that process." "I am just building a cabin," Marcus said. "See that you are," Veltok replied. For 3 days, Marcus worked under the watching eyes of both the widow and the observer's drones. He did not speak. He did not leave offerings. He just cut logs and fitted them together and tried not to think about what he was watching happen. On the 4th day, a support beam cracked as he was lifting it into place. The log was too heavy to hold with one hand while he repositioned, and too awkward to set down without losing the careful angle he needed. Marcus stood there, muscles shaking, trying to figure out a solution. The widow stepped forward. She moved silently, crossing the 80 yards between the tree line and the cabin site in moments. Up close, Marcus could see the grief carved into every line of her body, the way she held herself as if part of her was missing, the dullness in her large eyes, the tremor in her long-fingered hands. She reached up and took the weight of the beam. Together, they lifted it into place. Veltok's voice shrieked through the comm unit. "Contamination event. Contamination event. This is a direct violation of Article 47. I am reporting to Unity Command immediately. Webb, step away from the Mothkari right now." But Marcus was looking at the widow. At Shelvara, though he did not know her name yet. And in her eyes, for just a moment, he saw something besides grief. He saw a question. The Unity enforcers arrived in orbit within 6 hours. Their ship was a kilometer-long dreadnought that blocked out the sun when it passed overhead. Governor Caney was on Marcus's property within minutes of the ship's appearance, his face pale with terror. "They are giving us 72 hours to evacuate the colony," Caney said. "Every human, every structure. They want Frontier's Edge cleared and returned to protected wilderness status." Marcus was still working on the cabin. Shelvara, the Mothkari widow, had not left since she helped him with the beam. She was not working with him exactly. She was just present, watching. Sometimes her long fingers would trace the grain of a log or test the strength of a joint, like she was remembering something. "Marcus, are you listening to me?" Caney's voice rose. 2,000 people are about to lose everything because you could not follow one simple rule." "What rule?" Marcus asked, not looking up from his work. "Do not help someone who needs help?" "She does not need help. She is mourning. It is what her species does." Marcus finally stopped working. He looked at Caney. She was dying, starving herself to death. That is not mourning. That is suicide. And I do not stand by and watch people kill themselves. Not anymore. Caney opened his mouth, then closed it. He knew Marcus's history. Everyone in the colony did. The decorated soldier who came home broken. "The Unity enforcers are extracting her," Caney said quietly. "They are taking her to a grief sanctuary where she can mourn properly. Without interference. Did anyone ask her what she wants? She is not capable of wanting anything right now. That is the whole point. The grief state shuts down decision-making. It is biological. Her brain chemistry has literally changed. The Mothkari elders explained this to Unity Command centuries ago." Marcus looked at Shelvara. She was standing beside a half-finished wall, one hand resting on the wood. "She helped me lift that beam yesterday. That took decision-making. That took choice. That took contamination," Veltok said, scuttling into the clearing. "You compromised her grief state. You introduced external stimuli that disrupted the natural mourning process. What you see as help, the galaxy sees as violation. A transport descended from the sky. It was sleek and silver, marked with the symbol of the Unity Enforcers. The hatch opened and 3 figures emerged. 2 were enforcement officers in full armor. The third was a Mothkari, old and draped in ceremonial cloth. The elder Mothkari approached Shelvara. When it spoke, Marcus's translation device picked up the words. "Come, child. You will be taken to a proper sanctuary. You will mourn as our ancestors mourned. You will be protected from interference." Shelvara did not move. The elder tried again. "The contamination will fade. Your grief will return to its pure state. Come." Shelvara's hand tightened on the wooden wall. Her voice, when it came through the translation matrix, was rough from disuse. "No." The clearing went silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. "What did you say?" the elder asked. "No." Shelvara's voice was stronger now. "I will not go." The elder's composure cracked. "You do not understand what you are saying. The contamination has confused you. This human has broken you." "This human," Shelvara said, "showed me I was not as broken as I thought." Governor Caney's comm unit beeped. He listened, his face going even paler. "Ambassador Hayes is inbound from Earth. ETA 30 minutes. She is invoking diplomatic protocol." Veltok's mandibles clicked in agitation. "This is not a diplomatic matter. This is a clear violation of unity law. Everything is diplomatic when Earth's ambassador invokes protocol," Caney said. He looked at Marcus. "You just escalated this from a colony problem to an interstellar incident. I hope you know what you have done." Marcus did not, but he knew he was not sorry. Victoria Hayes arrived in a ship bearing Earth's diplomatic seal. She was a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She took one look at the situation, at Marcus and Shelvara standing together by the half-built cabin, at the Unity Enforcers and their ship overhead, at the Mothkari elder practically vibrating with outrage, and she smiled. "Well," she said, "this is quite the mess you have made, Mr. Webb." "I built a cabin," Marcus said. "You did considerably more than that." Victoria turned to the Mothkari elder. "Honored elder, I am Ambassador Victoria Hayes of Earth. I am invoking Article 12 of the Unity Charter, which allows for diplomatic review before enforcement actions are taken against new member species." The elder's down rippled. "Article 12 applies to disputes about law interpretation. There is no dispute here. The law is clear. The law is clear that interference is forbidden," Victoria agreed. "But what constitutes interference?" "That is the question. Mr. Webb did not force contact. He did not coerce participation. He simply existed in proximity and allowed Shelvara to make her own choices. She is not capable of choice in her grief state, and yet she just said no to you." Victoria's voice was gentle but firm. "That is a choice, honored elder, whether you accept it or not." The elder turned to Shelvara. "Tell them you are compromised. Tell them you need sanctuary." Shelvara looked at the elder, at the enforcers, at the ship overhead. Then she looked at Marcus in the cabin. "I need," she said slowly, "to finish building this roof. The rainy season comes soon. If it is not sealed properly, water will damage the interior." Marcus felt something shift in his chest. She was not just present. She was invested. She cared about the cabin. Victoria smiled wider. "Honored elder, I am calling for a full Unity Council hearing. Earth contests the charge of cultural contamination. We believe we have offered something the galaxy has overlooked for millennia. Not interference, but hope. Hope is not biology," the elder said coldly. "Then let's find out," Victoria replied. "Let the council decide whether a Mothkari recovering from grief is contamination or miracle." The elder drew up to full height. "Very well. The Unity Council will hear this case, but know that when you lose, Earth will lose not just this colony, but any chance of expansion for the next century. You are betting your entire species' future on one broken human and one confused Mothkari." Victoria looked at Marcus, at Shelvara, at the cabin built log by log. "I have seen worse bets," she said. "The Unity Enforcers withdrew, but the blockade remained. Frontier's Edge was quarantined pending the Council's decision. And Marcus Webb, who had just wanted to build a cabin and find some peace, found himself at the center of a galactic crisis. But when he looked at Shelvara, still standing by his cabin, still present, still choosing to be there, he could not bring himself to regret it. The Unity Council chamber had been intimidating when Victoria stood alone in the defendant's circle. Having Marcus beside her now did not make it less intimidating. but it did make it more personal. The 7,000 representatives watched them with a mixture of curiosity, disgust, and outright hostility. The Magistrate Prime's crystalline form pulsed with orange light. Marcus Webb, you stand accused of violating Article 47 of the Unity Charter by interfering with the grief state of a protected Mothkari widow. The evidence is clear. You provided sustenance. You engaged in communication. You participated in shared labor. These are all classified as contamination events. What defense can you possibly offer? Marcus looked up at the vast amphitheater. He had faced enemy fire. He had walked through the wreckage of Kepler Station, picking up pieces of his friends. But nothing had prepared him for this. 7,000 alien faces, most of whom wanted him punished. I do not have a defense, Marcus said quietly. I did what they said I did. I gave her water. I talked to her. I let her help me build my cabin. The amphitheater erupted in clicks and whistles and harmonic sounds. The magistrate raised an appendage for silence. Then you admit your guilt? The magistrate said. I admit what I did, Marcus said. Whether it is guilt depends on what you think I did wrong. You interfered with sacred mourning rituals. I watched a person slowly kill themselves and offered them an alternative. A new voice entered the chamber. It came from a section Victoria had not noticed before, draped in blue cloth. The speaker was humanoid but covered in scales that reflected light like oil on water. The human speaks as if death is inherently wrong. Many species see death as transcendence. The Mothkari see grief-death as the ultimate expression of love. Who are you to judge? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then, my best friend's name was James Cortez. We joined the Defense Corps together, fought together for 12 years. On Kepler Station, when the pirates breached the hull, James pushed 6 people into an escape pod before the section exploded. He saved them, but he died doing it. The chamber went silent. For 2 years after that, I wanted to die too, Marcus continued. Every morning I woke up and he was still gone. Every mission I flew, he was not there. The grief was so heavy I could barely breathe, and everyone told me that was normal. That mourning was healthy. That I needed to feel it. His voice grew stronger. But there is a difference between mourning and drowning. I was drowning. And if someone had told me that drowning was sacred, that I should just keep sinking until I hit bottom and never came back up, I would have believed them, because that is what grief does. It convinces you that dying is the same as honoring the dead. He gestured to where Shelvara stood in a witness section, flanked by guards. When I saw her at the edge of my property, I saw myself. Someone who had decided that living hurt too much. And maybe if I had not been through it myself, I would have left her alone. But I knew that death is permanent, and help is just an offer. She could have walked away any time. She could have refused the water. She could have stayed in the trees. But she did not. The Mothkari elder, Sulveth, rose from the silver-draped section. You speak of choice as if she had one. The grief state eliminates choice. It is neurochemical, biological. You cannot choose your way out of it any more than you can choose to breathe underwater. With respect, honored elder, Victoria interjected, we brought experts who might disagree. Dr. Lisa Wen, Earth's leading specialist in grief and trauma, can you present your findings? A holographic display activated. A woman appeared, middle-aged, with warm eyes and a clinical manner. I have spent 30 years studying human grief responses. What we have learned is that grief is not a single state, but a spectrum of responses. Some people process loss quickly. Others take decades. Some never fully recover. But the key finding is this: grief is influenced by environment, support systems, and purpose. The display showed brain scans. When humans experience devastating loss, our brain chemistry does change. Neural pathways associated with the lost person remain active, firing in absence, creating pain. We called this the ghost circuit phenomenon. For years we thought it was permanent. But we have discovered that new connections, new purposes, new relationships can create alternative pathways. Not replacing the old ones, running parallel to them. Sulveth's voice was sharp. You are describing human neurology. The Mothkari are not human. No, Dr. Wen agreed. But I have examined the neuroscans Shelvara agreed to provide. Her brain structure is different from ours, but the pattern is remarkably similar. Active pathways firing in absence. The ghost circuit. And since beginning work on Marcus Webb's cabin, we can see new pathways forming, not deleting the old ones, growing beside them. She looked directly at Sulveth. Honored Elder, what if the Mothkari grief state is not fundamentally different from human grief? What if the reason no Mothkari has ever recovered is not because it is impossible, but because no one has ever tried to help them? The amphitheater exploded. Representatives were on their feet, some shouting support, others condemnation. Through it all, Sulveth remained perfectly still. Finally, the ancient Mothkari spoke. For 300 years I have mourned. My bonded partner, our 7 offspring, all lost to the Gray Plague. I have lived in sanctuaries where others like me fade slowly, where we honor our grief until we return to the infinite. And you are saying this is wrong? That we should abandon our sacred traditions because one human thinks he knows better? Victoria stepped forward. We are saying that tradition should not demand death. If a Mothkari chooses to mourn until death, that is their right. But if one chooses to try to live again, should not that also be their right? They do not have the capacity to choose. Sulveth's voice cracked. That is what you refuse to understand. The grief state is total. It is consuming. There is no choice. There is only sorrow. Then let me prove you wrong, a new voice said. Shelvara stood, moving away from her guards. She walked across the chamber floor, her long legs carrying her to the center where Marcus and Victoria stood. I lost my bonded and our child 6 years ago, she said, her voice carrying through the translation matrix. The plague took them in 3 days. I held them as they died. I sang the death songs. I followed all the proper rituals, and then I went to the sanctuary, as I was supposed to. She turned slowly, addressing the entire amphitheater. For 5 years I faded. Every day I ate less. I spoke less. I felt less. And everyone told me this was right. This was proper. This was how love was honored. By dying slowly in remembrance, her voice grew stronger. But there was a part of me, a small part, that did not want to die. That remembered how much my bonded loved life, how our child laughed at sunrise, and that part kept asking, would they want me to die for them? Would they want me to waste the life they loved so much? Sulveth's voice was barely a whisper. You are contaminated. You do not know what you are saying. I am clear-headed for the first time in 6 years, Shelvara countered. Yes, Marcus Webb offered me water, offered me work, offered me presents. But what he really offered was permission. Permission to honor my dead by living, by building something new, by proving that their love made me stronger, not weaker. She looked directly at Sulveth. Honored elder, you have mourned for 3 centuries. But has your mourning brought your family back? Has your grief honored them? Or has it just destroyed you slowly? The ancient Mothkari trembled. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Sulveth spoke, and the words came out broken. I do not know how to be anything but grief. Neither did I, Marcus said softly. That is why I started building, not because I had answers. Because I needed something to do with my hands while I figured out how to keep living. Sulveth looked at Marcus, at Shelvara, at the cabin images still displayed in the hologram. Show me, the elder whispered. Show me how. The vote took 3 days. During that time, Marcus and Shelvara were confined to quarters in the Unity Diplomatic Complex. Shelvara spent most of the time drawing architectural plans for additions to the cabin. Marcus found it both comforting and surreal that they were planning construction details while their fate was being decided by 7,000 alien representatives. On the 3rd day, Victoria came to their quarters. Her face was carefully neutral. The council has reached a verdict. We need to return to the chamber. The amphitheater was packed, every seat filled. Marcus noticed that the sections were divided differently now. What had been a unified front against humanity had fractured into camps. Some sections were marked with blue light, others with red, still others with gold. The Magistrate Prime descended to the central position. Its crystalline form had turned a deep purple. This council has debated for 70 hours. We have reviewed testimony, examined evidence, and consulted with specialists across multiple disciplines. The question before us is simple. Did Marcus Webb commit cultural contamination by interfering with a Mothkari grief state? The magistrate paused. The answer is not simple. Orange light flowed across its surface. Article 47 was written to protect vulnerable species from exploitation. The Mothkari were classified as protected because their grief state made them susceptible to manipulation. The law assumed that any contact during grief would be harmful. It never considered that contact might be helpful. The magistrate turned to face Marcus. Marcus Webb, you violated the letter of the law, but in doing so, you revealed a flaw in the law itself. You proved that Mothkari grief is not immutable. That recovery is possible. That tradition, however ancient, can be wrong. The amphitheater erupted. The magistrate raised an appendage for silence. The council vote is as follows. On the charge of cultural contamination, not guilty. By a margin of 4,231 to 2,769, Victoria's hand found Marcus's shoulder and squeezed. Around them, half the chamber erupted in celebration while the other half sat in stunned silence. Furthermore, the magistrate continued. This council recognizes a new classification, therapeutic cultural exchange. When requested by individuals of sound mind and conducted with informed consent, practices designed to assist with trauma recovery shall no longer be classified as contamination. They shall be classified as aid. The magistrate's form shifted to a bright gold. The Mothkari elders are granted authority to establish protocols for their species, but individual Mothkari are granted the right to choose whether to follow traditional grief practices or seek alternative approaches. This right of choice is effective immediately. Sulveth stood in the silver-draped section. The ancient Mothkari seemed smaller somehow, less imposing. The elders acknowledged this verdict. We will open the grief sanctuaries. Those who wish to stay and mourn traditionally may do so. Those who wish to try something else will be permitted to leave. The elder's voice dropped. I am one of those who will leave. The amphitheater went silent again. Sulveth descended from the high seats, moving slowly, as if each step required thought. The elder approached Marcus. I have mourned for 300 years. In that time I have forgotten how to hope, how to build, how to live. I do not know if I can relearn these things, but I find I want to try. Marcus extended his hand. After a moment, Sulveth took it, the elder's long fingers wrapping around his. I am building a workshop, Marcus said, next to the cabin. I could use help. Sulveth's voice trembled. I do not know how to build human structures. Neither did I when I started, Marcus replied. That is part of the point. 2 months later, Frontier's Edge looked different. The quarantine had been lifted. The Unity enforcers had withdrawn, but the colony had grown. 30 Mothkari had arrived, refugees from grief sanctuaries across the galaxy, all seeking what Shelvara had found. A chance to try living again. Marcus's cabin was finished. It was larger than his original design, expanded to include a common room where Mothkari and humans could gather. Shelvara had built her own dwelling 50 yards away, close enough to visit but far enough to be independent. The distance was important. Healing was not the same as dependence. Sulveth worked in the workshop most days. The ancient Mothkari's hands shook at first, unused to purposeful labor after centuries of stillness. But slowly the trembling eased. Projects accumulated. A table, chairs, a decorative fence. Small things, but each one a statement, I am still here. I can still create. Victoria visited on a cool morning when the silver grass sang in harmony. She found Marcus on his porch, watching Sulveth and 3 other Mothkari raising the frame for a community center. You have become something of a celebrity, Victoria said, settling into a chair beside him. Half the galaxy thinks you are a hero. The other half thinks you are a dangerous radical who undermined sacred traditions. Marcus shrugged. I just built a cabin. You did considerably more than that. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Do you know what the most common message we are receiving at the embassy is? Requests from 17 different species, all asking about human grief therapy protocols, about how we help our traumatized recover, about whether we can teach them, she smiled. Earth has been in the galaxy for 5 years. In that time, we have been seen as primitive newcomers, backward, unsophisticated. But now we have something the galaxy needs, not our weapons, not our technology, our ability to heal. Marcus watched Shelvara join the construction effort, her movements confident now, purposeful. Grief is not a human invention. Every species that loves must eventually lose. Yes, Victoria agreed. But maybe humans are better at the aftermath. At the rebuilding, we fall apart so spectacularly that we have had to develop entire systems for putting ourselves back together. She stood to leave, then paused. The Council has asked if you would be willing to travel to other worlds, to teach your methods, to help establish recovery programs for other species. It would be dangerous. Some species will see you as a threat to their traditions, but it would also save thousands of lives. Marcus thought about Kepler Station, about the 40 people he could not save, about the years spent drowning in guilt and grief, about a cabin built log by log and the widow who had appeared at his tree line and the choice they had both made to keep building. "I will think about it," he said. Victoria smiled. "That is all I can ask." After she left, Marcus walked down to the construction site. Sulveth saw him coming and straightened, the elder's posture no longer bent under the weight of centuries. "Marcus Webb," Sulveth said, "I have a question." "Ask. When does it stop hurting? The grief for those we lost, when does it end?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "I do not think it does. Not completely. James is still dead. I still miss him, but the pain is different now. It is not drowning anymore. It is just there, part of the landscape of who I am." Sulveth was quiet for a long time. Then, "I can accept that. A landscape can be lived in, even a painful one." The Mothkari elder picked up a hammer, testing its weight. "Show me how to join these beams properly. I want this structure to last." Marcus smiled. "That is easy. You just take it one piece at a time, log by log, day by day. Eventually you look up and realize you built something worth having." They worked through the afternoon, human and Mothkari, building something new from the ruins of old grief. Around them the colony grew. Not just structures, but community. Not just houses, but homes. And at the edge of the clearing, where Shelvara had first stood 6 months ago, silver grass sang in frequencies that almost sounded like hope. Far above, in orbit, a Unity observation ship recorded everything. The footage would be distributed across the galaxy, evidence that grief was not the end. That mourning could become building, that the dead could be honored not by dying slowly, but by living fiercely. Marcus Webb had come to Frontier's edge to escape his past. Instead, he had changed the future. Log by log, day by day, building not just a cabin, but a bridge between species, proving that sometimes the greatest act of love was not dying for those you lost, but living for those still here. The cabin stood complete, smoke rising from its chimney, windows glowing warm in the fading light. A home built by broken hands, a sanctuary created from shared grief, a testament to the stubborn human refusal to let pain have the final word. And in the workshop beside it, an ancient Mothkari learned to use a saw, hands shaking less with each cut, discovering that even after 3 centuries of darkness, it was still possible to build something beautiful.